The heavy rain poured down relentlessly as Ethan Carter stepped out of a dimly lit alley, his clothes tattered, his hair unkempt, and his face partially covered by a scruffy beard. He clutched a small, crumpled bill in his hand, the only money he had for this experiment. He wasn't actually homeless. In fact, he was a billionaire, the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a leading real estate and retail conglomerate. But today, he wasn't here as the powerful businessman everyone feared and respected. He was here to test the true nature of the people running his company's stores. His target? Value Mart, one of his chain stores, which had recently been accused of mistreating the less fortunate. Shivering from the cold, he stepped inside, his shoes squeaking against the spotless, tiled floor. The warmth of the store was a stark contrast to the harsh, freezing wind outside. Customers walked past him with judgmental glares as he made his way toward the counter, where a store manager in a pristine navy blue uniform stood. Her name tag read Melinda, and she exuded an air of authority, one mixed with disdain. Ethan hesitantly approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am. I just need a little something to eat. Can I buy a sandwich and a bottle of water?" He placed his wrinkled bill on the counter, but before he could even finish his sentence, Melinda's eyes narrowed in disgust. She grabbed the bill and sneered. "Do you think this is some kind of charity?" Her voice dripped with condescension. Ethan kept his head down. "I just need a meal." Melinda snorted, waving a perfectly manicured hand. "People like you shouldn't even be in here. You smell you're scaring away customers, and frankly, I don't believe you have real money." She tossed the bill back at him as if it were diseased. Ethan clenched his fists. He could feel the stares of other customers, some smirking, some pitying him. He had expected discrimination, but not this level of cruelty. Before he could say anything, Melinda turned to a security guard. "Get him out of here before he steals something." The security guard grabbed Ethan's arm and began pulling him toward the exit. But just before he was thrown out, a familiar voice rang out from behind. "Let him go! Right! Now!" Everyone turned toward the entrance. It was one of Ethan's top executives. And she wasn't happy. The security guard froze, his grip on Ethan's arm loosening as the commanding voice echoed through the store. Melinda's smug expression faltered as she turned toward the entrance. Her face drained of color when she saw who had spoken. Striding in with an air of authority was Claire Hastings, Ethan's right-hand woman and chief operations officer of Carter Enterprises. Dressed in an elegant black coat and heels, she radiated power. "Ma'am, Melinda stammered. "I said let him go," Claire repeated, her piercing eyes locked on the security guard. He instantly obeyed, stepping back as Ethan rubbed his wrist. The store fell into an awkward silence, customers whispering amongst themselves. Ethan straightened up and smirked slightly, watching Melinda fumble for an excuse. "Ms. Hastings," she said, forcing a smile, I was just handling a situation here." "This man was a customer," Claire interrupted coldly, "and you just humiliated him in front of everyone. Care to explain?" Melinda's hands trembled as she tried to maintain her composure. He looked like a beggar. I thought he was here to—" Ethan chuckled softly and finally pulled off his fake scruffy beard, revealing his true face. The color drained completely from Melinda's face. "You thought I was here to steal?" Ethan said, his voice calm but laced with authority. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Carter?" The moment the name left her lips, the whispers turned into audible gasps. The CEO of Carter Enterprises, the billionaire who owned Value Mart. Melinda staggered back, her confidence shattering into 1,000 pieces. Ethan stepped forward, his voice low but powerful. "I came in here today not as a CEO but as a human being in need. And what did I get? Disrespect. cruelty, absolute humiliation. Melinda's lips quivered. "Sir, please, He raised a hand, cutting her off. "I trusted you to represent my company with dignity and fairness. And yet, today, you showed me exactly the kind of person you are." Tears welled up in Melinda's eyes as she desperately searched for words. "Claire," Ethan said, not even looking at the disgraced manager. "What's our company's policy on treating customers regardless of their appearance?" Claire smirked. "Respect, kindness, fair treatment, something that was clearly lacking here today." Ethan nodded, then turned back to Melinda with an icy stare. "And tell me," he said, "do you think you deserve a place in my company after this?" Melinda's face twisted in horror. "Mr. Carter, please, You're fired," Ethan said flatly. Melinda gasped, stumbling backward as customers clapped and cheered. Melinda staggered backward, her hands shaking as the realization hit her like a freight train. She had just lost everything: her power, her authority, her career, all because of her own greed and cruelty. "Mr. Carter, please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "It was a mistake. I didn't know." Ethan's expression remained cold. "You didn't know? Or did you just not care?" His voice was calm, yet razor-sharp, cutting through her excuses like a knife. Melinda opened her mouth to argue, but the damage was done. The store's staff and customers whispered among themselves, many nodding in agreement with Ethan's decision. "Security," Claire said, motioning toward the trembling woman. "Please escort her out." The two guards who had once stood at Melinda's side now turned on her, taking her by the arms as she shrieked in protest. "You can't do this to me! I built this store, "You built nothing," Ethan cut in. "You just ruined what we stand for." As the security guards dragged her out, the customers erupted into cheers. Some even pulled out their phones, recording as the former store manager disappeared from sight. But Ethan wasn't done yet. It was time to reward kindness. Ethan turned to the young cashier, Rachel, the only person who had treated him with kindness from the beginning. She stood there, blushing, clearly overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. "Rachel, right?" Ethan asked. She gulped and nodded. "Yes, sir." Ethan smiled. "You're exactly the kind of person I want running this store." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "What? Me? But I'm just a cashier." "You're not just anything," Ethan said. "You showed me kindness when you had no reason to. That's leadership. That's integrity." Rachel covered her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Claire said with a smirk. "Unless you don't want the job?" Rachel nodded frantically, unable to contain her excitement. "Yes, of course, yes." The crowd burst into applause again, and Ethan extended his hand. "Congratulations," he said. "You're the new store manager." Rachel shook his hand, her face lighting up with joy. As the customers cheered and the employees smiled in relief, Ethan looked around the store, feeling a sense of justice restored. Sometimes, he thought, karma just needs a little push.